there, this is the second part of a two-part series. Please be sure to watch the first part of the series, which is linked in the description below, before you begin this video. It explains important tools and techniques. Now in this video, we will make a polymer clay butterfly and a caterpillar. We will also learn how to bake clay properly without burning it. Now let's meet our models for today. This is George. He likes to take long walks on the soil. His favorite food is oak leaves with a hint of dew, and his go-to Halloween costume is himself. Look at those legs! George is the friend you never knew you needed and the perfect garden buddy. And this is Beatrice the butterfly. She's a stunner who volunteers at local pollination stations and spends her weekends educating birds and lizards about the importance of butterflies. There are a few ways to make these garden buddies, but here are the supplies I suggest. You can go to your local craft store or shop online for the following: polymer clay, we will use black, green, blue, red, yellow, and white; floral wire, I suggest 22 gauge wire or bigger; wire cutters, as well as an oven and an oven thermometer. Alright, let's get started on the butterfly. Here I am gathering black clay. I'm just starting to work with it and bring it all together so I can consider the size and shape of the butterfly. I'm going to start forming this into a teardrop shape once again. So I'm going to roll it between my hands and then pinch with the bottom of my fingers and flatten out as I'm doing that. I'm now going to take the second part of clay and do the same thing to form more wing. Here you can see that I'm flattening each wing part because butterfly wings are big and beautiful. I'm alternating between using the bottom of my palm and my fingertips because my palm has more surface area. You can see that this is only half of the butterfly. I just find forming wing segments easier than forming an entire wing at once because I can figure out the shape quicker and resize if necessary, and then I'm able to put the pieces together to form one beautiful butterfly wing, once again putting pressure on my palm to put those two pieces together. Now if you have any clay tools, I suggest getting what I call a pizza cutter and use that to cut any unwanted edges. You can also use a plastic knife if you have that already. I now have the shape and size that I want, so I'm going to start forming the other wing segments. They're going to look fairly close to the other side. It doesn't have to be exact. So I'm making that teardrop shape once again, and then I'm going to flatten these pieces out. Now that we have the shape of the butterfly wings done, I'm going to use the handle of one of my clay tools to flatten out the clay and remove some of the bumps, just like a rolling pin. And this is where parchment paper comes in handy because it's fairly easy to get the clay piece off the surface even when it begins to stick a little like it does here. I'm now going to take the ball sculpting tool and put some more detail into the wings, so I'm just drawing angled lines and I'm leaving an indent where the butterfly's body is going to be. So to make sure that I was prepared for this next step, which is making the butterfly's markings, I looked up some tropical butterflies and used local butterflies as my inspiration. I ended up picking greens and blues to help me create the markings. You can select whichever colors you would like and come up with your own design as well. Now that I've selected my clay, I'm forming different shapes to then place on the black wings. To work with smaller pieces of clay, I'm going to pick up one of those finer tipped tools and press down the clay and reshape it in some areas. I'm creating different thicknesses of lines and curving some to make the markings more varied. And now that I'm done with the green marks, I'm going to add in some of the vibrant blue. It's so pretty, it has little specks of different colors in it, which makes the clay shimmer. So I'm just going to use the blue to fill in some gaps here. I'm going to make these rounder and smaller groupings on the outside of the wing. Alright, one wing done. What's really exciting about this part is that all we have to do now is replicate what's on this wing. Think of it as a mirror almost. However, I was never really good at those math questions that asked about mirror image, so we'll see how this goes. Alright, this came out pretty well. I'm just going to trim off some excess pieces here, and then I'm going to start forming the body of the butterfly. And now I'm adding some green clay, and I'm going to start rolling this into a ball so that I can shape it back into a butterfly and get kind of like a mixture of colors here, which will make it look really, really cool. And now we have the butterfly body. I'm going to go ahead and place this onto the butterfly wings, and we have our butterfly. So instead of using garden wire for this one, we are actually going to perch it on this flower box right here. So I've selected some black clay, I rolled it out, and it's going to act as the seat for this butterfly. And then I'm going to start shaping this so that it could fit better on the flower box. Our best bet is to use the flower box as a mold, kind of leave an imprint in the clay so that I know that it will seat properly and I don't have to worry about it. So I'm just pushing it on there. Alright, so this looks good here. We're going to move forward by making an indent in the seat so that the butterfly sits more closely on it. All I've done is taken a toothpick and marked the clay in the center, and I'm going to start digging out that center part, which will leave a gap for the butterfly to sit on. Considering all the tools that I have, there's probably a better way to do this, but let's just use our nails. All right, so I've decided to brighten up a little bit and use my tools. Here I'm using a barrel-shaped tool to help drag the clay from the seat to the butterfly wing to join the two. All right, so we finished joining the clay pieces together, and now I'm checking to see if the butterfly fits on the box so that it can go ahead and be baked, and yes, we're good to go. I'm going to set Beatrice aside with the other garden buddies while I work on our final one. Moving on to our final garden buddy, the caterpillar. So I've gathered 3 different colored clay here, yellow, green, and red, and I'm going to roll them together to create a mixed color. All I'm doing now is dividing the clay into 6 parts because the caterpillar is going to have a head and 5 other segments to its body. All right, so we have all the segments, and now I'm just pushing the segments together slightly so they become more of a singular unit. Of course, he needs antennae because caterpillars have giant antennae at the top of their heads. We're going to cut these down a size so George can hear. And antennae are now used to hear, which is why I'm adding these cute little balls to the top of his antennae. Like earmuffs. All about the aesthetics. This next part is optional, but I decided to skewer George, by putting some flower wire through his body to help him stay together. Let's just cut off the tail because caterpillars don't have tails. And I'm bending the excess wire upward and back into the last segment of the caterpillar for a cleaner, more finished look. Okay, I don't know when he got eyes, but they're there now. I just used white clay for the white of the eyes and then later added black for the pupils. And the final part is adding legs. Yes, caterpillars have many legs. We're adding some translucent liquid Sculpey to those pilot holes just so that the wire and the clay have a firmer bond together. And here he is. Okay, so maybe his legs are terrifying. He reminds me of those science fiction creatures that come down from the darkness of the sky and grab hold of the earth to attack humans. But George, come on, you wouldn't do that, right? Okay, so we're finally at the last step, baking. If you made it this far, well done. If not, well, then I'm just talking to myself at this point. So if you look on the clay package or wrapper, it will tell you at which temperature to bake as well as how long for a particular thickness of clay. This brand says to bake a 1/4 inch of clay at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. Now, with any clay project, whether you use a kitchen oven or a toaster oven, you need to invest in a reliable oven thermometer. From my experience, a clay piece burns because the temperature has risen, not because it has been kept in the oven too long. Originally, I had set my oven gauge to 275 as the package states. However, as I watched my thermometer, I saw that it was quickly approaching 305 degrees Fahrenheit, even though it was set at 275. So I lowered my gauge on the oven to about 225 degrees, which resulted in my oven heating to 275 consistently. This sounds like a pain, but once you do this a couple times, you don't have to worry because you learn how your oven works and you can pre-select the temperature and whatnot. Once you have an accurate oven thermometer, you can select a baking surface. I've used small baking sheets, glass trays, and mini metal roasting pans or aluminum foil pans to bake clay. They all have their pros and cons, but I prefer the mini roasting pans because you can find them cheap at the dollar store and they won't break if you drop them or bang them around a little bit. Once you've selected the surface you want to bake on, protect your clay from scorching by tenting it. And the goal is to create a barrier to the direct oven heat to transfer the heat around pieces more evenly. The first step is to select something to put your clay on before you tent it. There are quite a few options as you're just trying to prevent the bottom of the clay from being heated directly, but I've seen many people use cardstock, parchment paper, or ceramic tile. Then, put the clay pieces on the base you've selected. Once you have done that, you can make the tent. You can build this out of cardstock, aluminum foil, or parchment paper. I selected parchment paper because I had it on hand. Making a tent is simple. Put your clay piece and base on top of the tent paper, and just fold along 2 corners as shown here. Once you've folded along those lines, you can then fold along the other corners to create the tent. Depending on the tent material you selected, you may need to use a paper clip to clip the pieces together so that the tent stays closed. Make sure that your tent isn't too high or too big. You don't want it to touch any heating elements in your oven. Then you just transfer the tented clay to the tray and you're good to go. Now that I've tented my garden buddies and put them in the oven, I'm going to leave them in for 30 minutes as they are all about a 1/4 inch in size. However, I am going to check them at 15 minutes to make sure that the temperature hasn't spiked. After 30 minutes, I turned off my oven and let the clay pieces cool inside the oven gradually to prevent thermal shock. I then took them out, and here they are. You've now made beautiful garden buddies that can hang out with your plants and brighten up your yard. This would make a great gift for those plant people in your life. You know very well, we all know a plant person if we're not one. Thank you so much for watching the second part of this two-part series. I have some really exciting videos planned, so please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for future art, crafts, and DIY projects. Bye!